Thank you, Garamahagat Cahirlach, and thank you, Minister, for coming into the House. I think this is a very important session, and at the outset I want to commend and to thank all of the volunteers connected with all of these schemes as you have outlined, and all the workers and the participants on these schemes, because I think they make a huge valuable contribution to communities all over this country. Now, there's a few things I want to say in relation to community development. And these schemes as outlined here, I welcome every one of them. I think there's a lot of good schemes within it. But my God, this government, and indeed the last government before it went out, 2009 and 2010, cut the absolute heart out of community development in this country. I know it because I witnessed it, and it really was torn apart. And Minister, I think it was torn apart because it was a threat to the political establishment, because it was empowering people and it was building the capacity of people within communities, and you could see it, and I could see it working. I worked for many years in the community development sector myself, and I really could see the difference that it was making. And instead of that now, we have the whole plethora of schemes, but we have people tied up in form filling, in counting numbers and recounting them. And it's an issue of power and control. And it really, really worries me. And I think it was just the wrong way to go. It was a very deliberate move, I think. And I think it was first mooted in the White Paper in 1999, where they started to look at how could we control these community development organisations. You know, these are people who are thinking for themselves, thinking outside the box. And they set about trying to control them and to bring them and to politicise them. And that is an awful shame. So now we have many of the programmes and the schemes where the governance and the bureaucracy ties up people's minds. And I think it is a great loss to rural Ireland and to other parts of Ireland, where people are so caught up with the form filling, missing the deadline of the small gap you've got to apply between here and there, and the inflexibility around it all, that there is little room for creative thinking in it. So we have things like brought out now, we have digital hubs and all that. But I can just give you an example of maybe one of the projects that under the community development programme that we were trying to do, and we did for a number of years. And that was like the computer programming for children between the ages of 8 and 15. We recognised that if we could get those children excited and passionate about computer programming, then we could maybe tie that up with the likes of the transatlantic cable and all that. And that we envisaged is that we would have whole communities where you had a whole cohort of young people who are really into computer programming, and then who advance their education in that. And then you have this you would have this human capital within communities that would be able to stay at home, have their families at home, live in their communities, and just bring the heart back into communities again. But of course, what did the government do? No, they introduced savage cuts. So community development projects that were cut up to 60% of their funding, and then they were closed. They were shut down. They were shut down, and the reason I absolutely believe they were shut down is because they couldn't be controlled by government. So you had all of these community responses that you were able to do near to the ground with very, very little money. So I find it very hard to get excited about community development anymore. I also think it threatens the whole volunteerism, because you see now, even in committees, whether it be for St. Patrick's Day parades or whatever else might be put on around the country, and because of the bureaucracy and the insurance schemes and all of that that are necessary for that, volunteers aren't coming forward. And less volunteers are tired. They are worn out and they are tired with the bureaucracy and the governance. And then they look at something like the Children's Hospital and they see that the governance isn't there. So the governance is for the little people on the ground. You know, there are programmes that cannot buy a packet of biscuits without going through a whole procurement process of tenders and everything else, getting the best price and all of that. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be governance. Of course there should, and there should be accountability for any public money. But I think it is weighted for the smaller schemes in a way that it shouldn't be. I want to touch on a few of the schemes, and the first scheme being the CE scheme. So when it comes to the CE schemes, one of the most pressing issues is the lack of referrals. There are 1,990 vacant CE places advertised online, and that figure has remained high for some time. Obviously, these are community-based roles, many which would otherwise not exist in towns and villages, only for the CE scheme, such as the childcare assistants, caretakers, support workers, and many other roles. So the first thing supervisors will tell you when it comes to the lack of referrals is the department's preference to refer people to JobPath over the schemes. Minister, 140-something million to JobsPath. Please look at the contracts. Please look at the mistakes that were made inside JobsPath and the deals that are being done there, where people are being double referred, they're being taken off schemes to be put on JobsPath because we have guaranteed these private companies X number of participants to give them the revenue. It is wrong. 140 million that could be put into the local employment services and to real community development. It really needs to be looked at, and that's why my own party colleague John Brady has brought forward the motion this week as well to stop referrals being made to JobsPath. It is so wrong, and it doesn't add up. But CE in particular is dying on its feet. There has to be a minimum as well, a minimum extra, €50 extra for participants. You really have to give the incentive there. The other big issue, obviously, in relation to the CE schemes is the occupational pensions for CE supervisors and assistant supervisors. This was recommended by the Labour Court. We're asking the nurses to go back to the Labour Court and to use the mechanisms within the Labour Court and all that to make deals. But this was a ruling that was made. Where are the occupational pensions for supervisors and assistant supervisors of CE schemes? Please write that wrong. There's going to be a strike now. This has been pushed and pushed. I mean, they've been waiting. You know, these are people as well who haven't got a pay rise for 10 years. We're going to now witness a strike within the communities. That will mean that the most vulnerable people within the communities will be left without the vital services that these schemes are delivering. Another issue that can be done very simply is to extend the age and the limitation on the CE scheme from 66 to 70 to give people the choice. To give people the choice to go on to 70, people who are healthy and vibrant and make a huge contribution and have a huge experience and knowledge from within their communities. More flexibility is also needed on the rural social scheme to enable the preferred relations to avail of the herd number, so that you have nieces and nephews and all of that that can be attached to the herd number. So I really would ask you to look at that as well. The rural social scheme is a great scheme, but it is too restrictive in terms of who can take it up. There also has to be, you have to bring back the training funds for all of these programmes. You know, where you could go and get proper training and people, again, it was about empowering people and about giving people the small resources that would present huge returns to these people. They need proper training funds within them. Now, the THUS programme is only a one-year programme, so the participants are just beginning to gain confidence and skills when they have to leave. It is not right to build up people's expectations and then knock them down again. So I would ask you as well to look at that. It needs to be a multi-annual programme rather than the one-year programme, so that we can make the most of that. Also, disability allowance recipients should be allowed to avail of this scheme, because people get disability allowance for many reasons. Now, I'm going to say as well about leader, and I'm tired saying it. Minister, the layers of bureaucracy. I know some work has been done on it. The leader scheme has been completely politicised, bought in under the local authorities. The leader scheme in Ireland was operating as model of best practice throughout Europe. What did we do? We went in and we destroyed it, and it comes back to the power and control issue again, so that it doesn't matter. So you've Mayo, for instance, you have leader cut by between 10 and 12 million, and the minister thinks because he goes and advertises every single leader programme that it somehow gives people the illusion that there's more money there. You know, the SICAP programme, again, there's little room for community responses to key issues. I am going to finish up with that, Minister. Minister, my heart is broken by what this government and the last government did to community development. It really, really is, because we could have very different communities in building the capacity of people within it and having that human capital there. And you really need to be careful that the volunteers around this country are worn out and worn down. But maybe that was the intention in the first place. Thank you.